As the morning sun gently streamed into my cabin, I stirred from sleep. I stretched, noticing the stiffness in my muscles from the mattress. The unforgiving mattress hadn't been kind to me. It was all I had. As I sat up, I could see the bruises on my arms and legs from yesterday. I'm Aurora Nightshade, the Omega of the Clearwater Pack. At 15 years old, most would expect me to be excited about shifting for the time and finding my mate. Instead, each day is a struggle for survival in a pack that views me as nothing but a target for their abuse and a servant. I quickly dressed in my hand-me-down clothes, cast-offs from pack members who couldn't be bothered to offer anything better. Time was of the essence. Being late to prepare breakfast was not an option I wanted to entertain. Stealthily leaving my cabin, I scanned the surroundings for any risers. The last thing I needed was a run-in with one of those who made my life difficult. Thankfully, the path to the pack house was clear. I slipped into the kitchen. The kitchen was my domain, not out of respect, but because no one else wanted the responsibility of feeding the entire pack. I moved silently, gathering ingredients and heating the stoves. I got lost in my thoughts for a while, reminiscing about the days when my mom showed me how to cook. Suddenly, a pan slipped from my hands, made a clanging noise as it hit the floor. I stood still, feeling my heart racing in my chest. "You clumsy, useless bitch!" The shout came from behind me. Without looking, I could tell it was Beta Marcus. His strong hand grabbed my shoulder, turning me around and pushing me against the counter. "Can't you ever get it right?" I held back a cry by biting my lip, tasting the tang of blood. "It won't happen again. See that it doesn't." He growled, his face inches from mine. "Or you'll be sorry." As he stormed out, I took a shaky breath and returned to my tasks. My hands trembled slightly as I plated the food, but I forced them steady. Showing weakness would only invite more abuse. Pack members began filing in for breakfast, a procession of indifference and cruelty. Most ignored me entirely as if I were a piece of furniture. Others made it a game to make my life miserable. "Oops," sneered Kara, a she-wolf my age, as she deliberately knocked her orange juice onto the floor. "Clean it up, Omega." I gritted my teeth and grabbed a cloth, wiping up the spill as Kara and her friends giggled above me. As I stood, Luna Sarah approached, her nose wrinkled in disgust. "This food is atrocious," she declared, though I'd seen her eat the same meal with gusto just yesterday. Unexpectedly, she dumped her entire plate on the floor. "Clean this mess and make me something edible. Now!" As I cleaned up the second spill in as many minutes, I overheard excited chatter from a nearby table. "The full moon is in 2 weeks," a young wolf named Ethan was saying. "Do you think you'll find your mate at the ceremony?" My heart raced with excitement. The mating ceremony will be on my birthday. It had slipped my mind until now. A glimmer of hope ignited within me. Perhaps this event could change everything if I found my mate. Holding on to that flicker of hope, I completed my morning tasks in the kitchen. After breakfast, I was assigned to do the laundry. The laundry baskets felt heavier than usual. Maybe I was just feeling weaker each day. Struggling under their weight, my arms and back ached as I carried them outside to hang the clothes on the line. As I pinned up the sheet, everything around me suddenly blurred into a scene. The bright daylight faded into the night. Images of fur and sharp teeth flashed before me, mixed with the sounds of rogue wolves snarling and packmates screaming in fear. Then I saw them. My parents, shifting into their wolf forms, standing between me and a massive, scarred rogue. "Run, Aurora," my mother's voice echoed in my head. "Don't look back." I stood there feeling powerless, witnessing my parents fight the rogue. The scene was filled with a mix of teeth and claws, followed by cries of pain until everything fell silent. "Hey, Omega. Daydreaming on the job?" Gamma Tyler's mocking voice snapped me back to reality. I blinked, disoriented, only to see him knock over my basket of clean laundry. He laughed as he walked away, leaving me to rewash everything. I bit back the tears that threatened to fall. Crying wouldn't change anything. It wouldn't bring my parents back or make the pack treat me better. Instead, I gathered the soiled clothes and started over, whispering a quiet prayer to the moon goddess for strength. When it was time for lunch, I quietly made my way to a spot in the forest. It wasn't anything special. It was just a little clearing enclosed by thick trees, but it felt like my own little haven. I could imagine myself as brave and resilient. I moved through the basic fighting stances I'd observed during pack training sessions. My movements were awkward, unskilled. I kept going. I told myself that one day I would have the strength to protect myself. A branch cracked behind me. I spun around, my heart racing. Asher, the leader, was at the edge of the clearing, observing me with a look. I braced myself for reprimand, expecting him to take me back to the pack house and report my defiance. To my surprise, he didn't. He simply stood there, his penetrating gaze making me uneasy. After what seemed like an eternity, he walked away silently, leaving me puzzled and cautiously optimistic. Why hadn't he punished me? As the sun started to go, I rushed back to the kitchen to get dinner. While quickly cutting vegetables, the knife cut into my palm. I held back a yelp of pain, swiftly wrapping a cloth around the cut. I couldn't afford for anyone to notice my injury. They'd only use it as an excuse to punish me for incompetence. Dinner time was always a challenge. Tonight, a group of young wolves decided it would be fun to use me for target practice, flicking bits of food at me whenever the adults weren't looking. I saw Alpha Dominic notice their game, but he did nothing to stop it. Why would he? I was just the Omega. After I completed tidying up, my entire body ached with exhaustion. I warily made my way back to my cabin, collapsed onto the bed, feeling the fatigue seep into every fiber of my being. I pulled out my most treasured possession from under my pillow. I gazed at a faded photograph of my parents. I traced their smiling faces with a finger. "I miss you," I murmured, a tear slipping away despite attempts to hold it back. "I'm trying to be strong like you taught me, but it's so hard." As exhaustion pulled me towards sleep, I offered one last prayer to the moon goddess. "Please," I murmured, "let me find my mate soon. Let something in my life change for the better." With that final plea, I drifted off, dreaming of a future where I was more than just the Pack Omega, where I was strong, respected, loved. But morning would come all too soon, bringing with it another day of struggle and survival in the Clearwater Pack. Yet deep inside, that tiny spark of hope refused to die. Someday, somehow, things will change. They had to. I suddenly woke up feeling my heart racing in my chest. It took me a moment to remember why I was feeling so excited and anxious. Then it dawned on me. Ah yes, today is my 16th birthday. Usually, I'd already be up preparing breakfast for the pack, but today was different. I quietly left my room, headed towards the stream. Despite the water being cold, I didn't mind it as I washed myself, trying to cleanse myself of the memories from the past few years. As I was doing my thing in the water, I couldn't stop daydreaming about what could go down later. Would I find my mate? Would it be someone kind, someone who would protect me from the cruelties I've endured? "Please, moon goddess," I whispered to the lightning sky, "let today be the day everything changes." Back at the pack house, I snuck into the kitchen. For once, I wasn't there to cook for others. Today, I would make something special for myself. It was a small rebellion, using packed resources for my meal, but it was my birthday. I deserved this tiny luxury. As I was making my breakfast, which was a bunch of pancakes drizzled with honey, Luna Sarah just barged in. I froze, waiting for the reprimand and punishment for my selfishness. But Luna Sarah merely looked at me, her lips pursed in displeasure. "I see you've remembered your birthday," she said coldly. "Don't forget your duties before the ceremony. The pack doesn't stop functioning just because you're turning 16. I nodded quickly. "Yes, Luna Sarah, I'll get right on it after I eat." She gave a sniff, chose to remain silent as she walked away. I breathed out deeply, feeling a sense of wash over me without noticing I had been holding my breath. I savored each bite of my pancakes, letting myself fully appreciate the moment. Then I got to work on my chores. I moved quickly, my mind constantly drifting to the upcoming ceremony. When I finally returned to my room to get ready, I found something unexpected waiting for me. Laid out on my bed was a dress, simple but pretty. It was a blue dress with white heels, and it was my size. There was no note. I just stared, hardly believing it was for me. With trembling hands, I picked the dress. The material was softer, way nicer than any outfit I'd had on in forever. I put it on and turned around to check myself out in the mirror. The girl I saw in the mirror was not the same. That dress was hugging my body tight, unlike the old baggy stuff I usually wear. And you know what? For the first time in forever, I felt pretty. For a moment, I allowed myself to feel beautiful, to feel hopeful. Maybe tonight, someone would look at me and see more than just the pack Omega. From my window, I could see pack members running around the main clearing area, getting everything ready for the ceremony. The vibe was electric, like everyone was buzzing with excitement. I wanted to join and lend a hand, but I had a hunch that if I did, I'd just get the cold shoulder. Then, out of the blue, Beta Marcus popped up, looking at me like I just suggested wearing a tutu to a wolf pack gathering. "Don't even think about messing with the setup," he grumbled. "Make yourself scarce until the ceremony starts." I nodded meekly, shrinking back from his intimidating presence. As he stomped away, I felt my earlier joy deflating. What was I thinking? Dress or no dress, I was still just the Omega. Tonight won't be any different. Feeling the need for some peace of mind, I quietly made my way to the spot in the forest. I found myself kneeling at the heart of the clearing, closing my eyes and inhaling deeply. "Mom, Dad," I whispered, "I wish you were here with me. I'm feeling anxious. I'm freaking out. What if I don't find my mate? What if I do, and they reject me like everyone else?" The gentle breeze moved the leaves on the trees. It reminded me of my parents, as if they were sending me a soothing embrace, from above like a tender touch. As I made my way back to the pack house, Alpha Dominic's imposing voice rang out. "Aurora, my office now." Swallowing hard, I hurried to obey. The Alpha's office was intimidating, all dark wood and trophies from hunts. Alpha Dominic himself was even more imposing, his muscular frame dwarfing me as I stood before his desk. "You understand the importance of tonight's ceremony?" he asked, his voice gruff. I nodded quickly. "Yes, Alpha." "Good, because I expect you to be on your best behavior. No embarrassing the pack, understand? You find your mate, and you accept them graciously, regardless of who it is. And if you don't find your mate, you keep quiet and don't make a scene. Are we clear?" "Yes, Alpha," I replied softly. He waved a hand to send me away, and I left his office. As evening came on, I joined the other wolves. We grouped together, excited mass. I stood outside, a little coldly, but even I could not help being carried away a little with the excitement. Alpha Dominic called for silence, and the clearing fell quiet. He began to speak about the significance of finding one's true mate, about the strength it brought, not just to the couple, but to the entire pack. I listened intently, my heart racing. This was it. This was my chance for everything to change. Following tradition, those of us hoping to find our mates formed a circle in the center of the clearing. Older, unmated pack members created rings around us. The air felt charged, almost electric with possibility. Alpha Dominic raised his hands to the sky. He intoned, "We ask for your blessing this night. Guide these young wolves to their true mates. Strengthen our pack with these sacred bonds." When he talked, I felt a sensation as if something within me was stirring. It began in my chest, creating a sense of warmth and comfort before enveloping my being. Around me, people began to move. Some were drawn to each other immediately, the mate bond snapping into place with almost audible force. Others wandered, following the pull of their wolves. I stood frozen, overwhelmed by the energy zipping through me. What if I didn't feel a single thing? What if no one was drawn to me? And then I felt it, a pull so strong it was almost painful. I turned, my body moving of its accord, and found myself face to face with Asher, the future Alpha. Time seemed to stop. The noise of the ceremony faded away. Asher's eyes, a warm honey brown, widened in surprise and recognition. This can't be happening. Asher, the strongest, most respected young wolf in the pack, couldn't possibly be my mate. I heard all the gasps and whispers going around the room. I looked around, and I saw Beta Marcus and Gamma Tyler giving each other worried looks. Luna Sarah's face was a mask of fury and disbelief. But none of that mattered. All that existed was Asher and me, and the incredible, terrifying connection between us. Asher reached out, his hand trembling. When our fingers touched, it was like a jolt of electricity. I gasped and saw my shock mirrored in Asher's eyes. "Silence!" Alpha Dominic's voice cut through the growing commotion. Everyone fell quiet, all eyes on us. "It appears," the Alpha continued, his voice a mix of surprise and resignation, "that we have witnessed the form of a particularly significant mate bond. My son, Asher, future Alpha of the Clearwater Pack, has found his true mate in Aurora Nightshade. This changed everything. I was no longer just the Omega. I was the future Luna. As I gazed at Asher, everything else around me gradually blurred into the background. The bond we shared seemed to breathe with life, intertwining us in a manner beyond my understanding. A surge of both thrill and dread quickened my heartbeat, sending a rush of emotions through me. This was the moment that would change everything. Alpha Dominic's voice cut through the hushed whispers of the pack. "We're about to start the ritual for accepting a mate," he declared in a slightly tense manner. I paused, took a breath, and attempted to calm my shaking hands. "This is really happening, Asher. The future alpha of our pack was my mate. Me, Aurora Nightshade, the Omega, the girl everyone looked down upon. It was a dream come true." Following tradition, I reached out my hand to Asher, offering it with my palm up, anticipating his grasp to solidify our connection. I gazed into his eyes, hoping to witness the awe and happiness mirrored back at me. Asher's expression had changed. The initial shock of our bonding had faded, replaced by something that made my stomach churn. Was that disgust? I faltered, my outstretched hand wavering. "Asher?" I whispered, too quietly for anyone but him to hear. He didn't respond. His gaze, once filled with warmth, now appeared distant and chilly. The group surrounding us fell into a hushed silence, the air with anticipation as we all awaited Asher's reply. Suddenly, Luna Sarah pushed through the crowd. Her expression turned fierce as she approached her son, speaking urgently in his ear. I couldn't catch the words. Asher's reaction was swift. His jaw tightened, his gaze becoming more intense. Time seemed to slow down as Asher took a deliberate step back from me. The loss of proximity made the mate bond ache, a physical pain that radiates through my chest. "I, Asher Thorn, rejects Aurora Nightshade as my mate and future Luna of this pack," Asher declared, his voice ringing out clearly across the clearing. The words hit me like a physical blow. I stumbled backward, my mind reeling. This couldn't be happening. Mate bonds were sacred, unbreakable. To reject one was, unthinkable. Gasps and murmurs erupted from the pack. I was vaguely aware of people pointing, whispering, but it all felt distant, as if I was underwater. "Asher?" Alpha Dominic's voice boomed out, silencing the crowd. "Explain yourself." I glanced up at Asher, praying that there had been an error, and he would retract his words. However, the expression on his face crushed any lingering hope, instantly. Asher sneered down at me, his handsome features twisted into something ugly. "Explain myself?" he spat. "It's simple. I won't be saddled with her as my Luna. She's weak, pathetic, the Omega." He practically spat the word. "Can you imagine her bearing my pups, leading this pack beside me? It's laughable." Every word felt like a needle piercing my heart. I had the urge to escape, to find shelter. My limbs refused to cooperate. I remained motionless, unable to move, while Asher shattered all the hopes and dreams I had. From the corner of my eye, I saw Beta Marcus and Gamma Tyler exchanging satisfied smirks. They never liked me. Now they are enjoying seeing me humiliated. Stupid Omega thought she could be Luna. As if Asher would ever want you. Go back to the kitchen where you belong. Their disapproval weighed heavily on me. I collapsed, my legs failing me. I dropped to the ground, the force sending a shockwave through my body. Tears ran down my cheeks, though I was hardly aware of them. How could this turn of events unfold? How could the pinnacle of my existence unravel into such an ordeal? Luna Sarah stepped forward, her face a picture of smug satisfaction. "My son has made the right choice," she announced to the pack. "We can't let someone like her tarnish our family line. She's a servant. That's all she'll ever amount to." Her statement was greeted with cheers of approval. I cowered down, attempting to shrink into the background, wishing I could vanish. All of a sudden, something struck me. I raised my head to see Kara, a bully who had plagued me for years, picking up another clump of soil. "Here you go, Omega," she jeered. "This is your specialty, wallowing in the dirt." She threw the dirt at me, and others quickly joined in. Clumps of earth and small stones pelted me, adding physical pain to the emotional agony I was already enduring. Through it all, Alpha Dominic stood silent. I looked to him, a last desperate hope for intervention. But his face was a mask of resignation. "If this is your decision, Asher," he said finally, "then as Alpha, I accept your rejection of the mate bond." Those words sealed my fate. The tiny bit of hope I was holding on to just shattered. It felt like the end. All my dreams and aspirations had vanished. I reached my breaking point. I needed to leave that place. I quickly stood up, planning to flee, desperate to get out of this horrifying situation. "Where do you think you're going, Omega?" "Stay here and entertain us." "Yeah, dance for us, reject." Their cruel laughter washed over me. I turned around, searching for an escape route, only to find Asher walking away without a glance. He was accompanied by his friends, all chuckling at my situation. Watching him depart emphasized the reality of the situation. There was no coming back from this. The excitement of the mate ceremony was over, replaced by the thrill of new gossip. I heard snippets of conversation as they left. "Can you believe what happened? I always knew she was worthless. Thank the moon goddess, Asher didn't get stuck with her. What would happen to me now? I was still an Omega, but now I was worse than that. I was the rejected mate." As I came to terms with my circumstances, a fresh feeling started to emerge, growing stronger with each passing moment. Anger. Not just at Asher or Luna Sarah or the cruel pack members. I was angry at myself for daring to hope, for believing that I could be more. I glanced at the blue dress I was eager to put on earlier. It was now dirty and ripped from my tumble. Just like my hopes, it had started out lovely and full of potential, but ended up damaged and left behind. At that instant, I felt a change within me. The part of me that always believed things could get better faded away and was gone. In its place, a cold determination took root. I couldn't stay here. I had to leave. The thought should have terrified me. I had never been outside of Packlands, never had to fend for myself. Standing there alone and feeling defeated, the thought of going away seemed like the only choice I had. I ran into the dark woods. Leaving everything familiar behind, I silently promised myself, one day, in some way, I will grow strong. I sprinted quickly, with tears streaming down my face and mingling with the sweat. I had no idea where I was heading. I didn't mind. All I knew was that I needed to flee, to escape the shame, the exclusion, and the deep hopelessness that felt like it could consume me entirely. In my hurried escape, I didn't notice the twisted tree root sticking out of the ground. My foot tripped over it, and I suddenly fell. I landed hard, the force making it difficult to breathe. As I lay there, trying to catch my breath, I felt my once lovely blue dress rip even more. It seemed appropriate, I thought sadly. The dress, like my hopes, was now just torn pieces. Gradually, I lifted myself up. At that moment, it dawned on me. The scents around me had changed. The familiar smells of the Clearwater Pack territory were gone, replaced by the unknown scents of unclaimed forest. I had crossed the pack boundary. For a moment, fear made me unable to move. I had never been outside Packlands before, but then I heard it. Howls in the distance. The pack was searching for me. Fear rushed through me when I thought about being pulled back and facing their jokes and meanness again. Without thinking twice, I ran further into the unfamiliar woods. As I kept running, the surrounding woods started to look different. The trees became taller, their branches stretching out like grabbing hands. Shadows got longer and darker as night approached. Every little noise in the bushes, every broken twig made me jump. This wasn't the safe, familiar forest I knew from growing up. These woods had dangers I couldn't even guess. Finally, my legs couldn't carry me anymore. I tripped into a little open space and fell down, crying and exhausted. The day's events hit me hard. The happiness of finding my partner, the deep sadness of being turned down, the embarrassment of being laughed at by everyone in the group. It was all too much. I wrapped myself up, wishing I could vanish, wishing I had never come into the world. A loud sound in the bushes made me stop feeling sorry for myself. I quickly looked around, trying to see through the dark. It hit me then how risky my situation was. I was by myself, in a place I didn't know, with no protection. Instinctively, I tried to shift into my wolf form. But the turmoil of my emotions, the shock of the mate rejection, left me unable to complete the change. I was stuck in my vulnerable human form. That's when I noticed them. 2 bright red eyes shining in the dark, staring at me. I stopped breathing for a moment. Those eyes didn't belong to an ordinary wolf. As I stood there, too scared to move, its fur was tangled and marked with scars, and its body was strong and powerful. But it was the eyes that kept me still. Bright red circles filled with anger and hunger. I quickly moved back, my hand desperately looking for something on the ground to use as a weapon. My fingers grabbed a strong stick, just as the rogue wolf lunged at me. Its big mouth opened close to my face, and the smell of its breath made me want to throw up. Without thinking, I hit the rogue with all my strength. The stick hit the wolf's nose with a loud sound. The wolf cried out, surprised for a moment, but I knew it wouldn't stay like that for long. I got up, holding the stick in front of me like a sword. The rogue recovered quickly, shaking its head and fixing those terrible red eyes on me once more. It began to circle, looking for an opening. I turned quickly with it, my heart beating so fast I was afraid it might burst out of my chest. This was the moment. This was how I was going to meet my end. Alone in the woods, taken down by a rogue wolf, my body lost forever. Maybe it was fitting, I thought darkly. The rejected mate dying a reject's death. But right when the sneaky person was about to strike again, something strange happened. I started feeling warm inside, and it spread all over me. My vision got better, and I could smell things much more clearly. I looked down to see claws extending from my fingertips. I hadn't fully shifted, but somehow my wolf had partially emerged. I didn't have time to ponder this miracle. The rogue attacked again, a blur of teeth and claws. But this time, I was ready. I met its charge head-on, my newfound strength allowing me to grapple with the massive beast. We tumbled to the ground, a tangle of fur and flesh. Pain exploded in my shoulder as the rogue's teeth sank in. I screamed, the sound more wolf than human. But even as its jaws clamped down, I managed to drive my claws into its throat. Hot blood gushed over my hands, the rogue's grip on my shoulder loosening. With a final, desperate surge of strength, I ripped my claws through the rogue's throat. The beast let out a gurgling howl, then went limp. I pushed it off me, watching as the light faded from those terrible red eyes. I had done it. I had killed a rogue, me, Aurora Nightshade, the Omega, the Reject. I had faced death and emerged victorious. But as the excitement started to go away, I realized how much my win had hurt me. My shoulder hurt a lot, and every beat of my heart made it worse. I noticed my dress had blood all over it. Everything around me began to spin, and the trees appeared blurry. I fell down next to the dead enemy, and my body went into shock because I had lost so much blood and was hurt so badly. As I lay there, losing my life on the forest ground, I felt a strange peace. Is this what dying feels like? It's not as frightening as I imagined. Perhaps it would be peaceful to simply shut my eyes and stop struggling. But as soon as that idea came to me, I felt a strong resistance inside me. No, I couldn't die here, not in this way. I had survived years of abuse in the pack. I had survived Asher's cruel rejection. I had survived and killed a rogue wolf. I was Aurora Nightshade, and I was a survivor. Thinking about this, I attempted to lift myself, to drag myself along, to make any kind of movement. But my body didn't react. I had lost too much blood, and the injuries were too serious. My sight started to dim at the corners, and everything around me was disappearing. As I started to lose awareness, I noticed a different smell in the air. It was strange, but it all felt reassuring. Using the little energy I had left, I turned my head to look where it was coming from. As my eyesight grew weaker, I noticed someone coming out of the woods. They were tall and strong, giving off a sense of power I hadn't experienced before. Not even Alpha Dominic had possessed such a presence. The figure knelt beside me, and I felt a gentle hand on my forehead. "Rest now, little wolf," a deep voice said. "You're safe." I slowly opened my eyes, trying to prevent the light from blurring my eyesight. I looked around. This place wasn't the forest, nor was it the infirmary of my old pack. The walls were a gentle beige, and the room had a scent of cleaning supplies mixed with pine. Where am I? Before I could figure out my location, someone hurried over to me. My vision was still a bit unclear, but I could make out wide shoulders and eyes full of concern. As my sight cleared, I saw the face of the most attractive man I had ever laid eyes on. He had a firm jawline, tight with worry, and his dark green eyes looked at me with seriousness. "You're awake," he said, sounding both relieved and anxious. I wanted to speak, but my throat felt very dry. The man, Alpha, my wolf, whispered, reached out to touch my arm. I instinctively moved back, which caused a sharp pain in my body, and I couldn't help but let out a small sound of pain. But what really made me step back was the memory of Asher rejecting me. The unhappy expression in his eyes and the mean words he spoke to me, I remembered it all, which made me feel ashamed and scared. "It's okay," he said gently. You're safe here. My name is Xander, and I'm the leader of the Blackstone Pack. He paused, looking at me intently as he added, and I'm your mate. My mind reeled at his words. Mate? But how? Asher had said... No, I couldn't think about that now. Hope and fear warred within me as I processed Xander's declaration. I felt mixed emotions and wanted to sit up to put some distance between us. But when I tried to move, a sudden, intense pain shot through my ribs, causing me to cry out in pain. Easy there, Xander said, his hands hovering near me, ready to help but not touching. You're still healing. Let me help you lie back down. Reluctantly, I allowed him to ease me back onto the pillows. As his hands gently supported me, I felt a jolt of electricity where our skin met. The mate bond I realized with a mixture of awe and trepidation. It was real. Once I was settled, I took a shaky breath and met Xander's eyes. What happened to me? I asked quietly. How did I end up here? Xander brought a chair near the bed and sat, looking relaxed and not scary. We discovered you in the woods at the border of our land, he said gently in a calm tone. You were unconscious and badly injured. I brought you back here to our pack's infirmary. What is your name? He asked. As he spoke, all the memories came back, reminding me of what I went through. I started, then faltered. How could I explain? The shame burned in my chest, threatening to choke me. But Xander waited patiently, his presence oddly comforting despite my fear. I took a deep breath and managed to say, My name is Aurora Nightshade. My previous alpha, Asher. I swallowed hard. He rejected me. Said I wasn't fit to be his Luna, that I was worthless. The words lingered in the space between us, and I prepared for Xander's response. Would he agree? Realize that Asher was right, and that I wasn't worthy of being anyone's mate, let alone an alpha's? Instead, Xander's eyes flashed with anger so intense it made me shrink back against the pillows. A low growl rumbled in his chest, and for a moment I saw the fierce alpha wolf beneath the gentle exterior. Seeing my reaction, Xander immediately softened his expression. I apologize, he stated, his tone once more tranquil and comforting. I'm not upset with you, Aurora. I'm furious at Asher for treating you that way. No wolf, especially not a true mate, should ever be treated like that. His words were kind, but doubt still gnawed at me. I'd been rejected once. Who was to say it wouldn't happen again? But what about your pack? I asked hesitantly. Won't they be upset that their alpha's mate is someone like me? Xander leaned forward, his gaze intense. Aurora, listen to me. You are my mate, chosen by the moon goddess herself. You are strong, brave, and worthy. You'll be my Luna, and the pack will love and respect you just like that. I promise no one will ever hurt you or make you feel unimportant again. His strong belief really affected me. A part of me really wanted to trust him, to just lean on him and let him keep me safe from everything. But the pain Asher caused was still very new, and the fear was still strong. Before I could say anything, the door to the infirmary opened. 2 men entered, both tall and muscular, though neither quite matched Xander's imposing presence. I tensed immediately, my eyes darting between them and Xander, searching for any sign of threat. Xander stood, placing himself slightly in front of me in a protective stance that didn't go unnoticed. Aurora, he said, his voice gentle but firm, I'd like you to meet Beta Jackson and Gamma Marcus. They're my most trusted pack members. The 2 men politely nodded and moved a bit away, realizing I was feeling uneasy. It's a pleasure to meet you, Luna, the taller one, whom I guessed was Jackson, said with a slight bow. Luna, the title hit me like a physical blow. This was real. I found myself in a new pack with a new mate, anticipated to take on the role of their Luna. A wave of unease washed over me, causing my chest to tighten and making each breath a struggle. Xander must have noticed because he quickly glanced at them. Thank you for coming. We'll continue this later. Please inform the pack that Aurora is awake but needs rest. As soon as they left, Xander was by my side again. Aurora, breathe with me, he instructed calmly. In through your nose, out through your mouth. That's it, nice and slow. I concentrated on the sound of his voice and the gentle rhythm of his breathing, attempting to sync my breaths with his. Slowly the fear faded away, leaving me drained and shaking. Am sorry, I murmured, feeling embarrassed. I'm not sure why I reacted like that. Xander shook his head, showing he understood. No need to apologize. You've been through a lot. Now you find yourself in a situation. It's normal to feel overwhelmed. His kindness nearly brought me to tears. Given all that I've experienced, being shown care and respect felt almost overwhelming. Tears welled up in my eyes. This time I didn't hold them back. Xander moved carefully, showing his intentions. When I stayed put, he gently brushed the tears off my cheek. "It's okay to let it out," he whispered. "You're safe here, Aurora, I promise." As my tears stopped, I looked up at Xander. He had a genuine expression on his face of the usual signs of disapproval or disdain that I often observed in Asher's eyes. It was the moment since I awoke that a glimmer of optimism flickered within me. "Thank you," I whispered, my gratitude shining through my words. Xander smiled warmly, his expression of a sunbeam piercing through the sky. "No need for thanks, Aurora. We're in this together. I'll always be here for you, no matter what happens." I nodded, not entirely convinced of the promise, yet not rejecting it outright either. It was a gesture, one that carried significance. As I rested against the pillows, a sense of weariness washing over me, I considered the possibility that perhaps, I had discovered a place where I could truly belong. I heard the sound of the infirmary door creaking open. Looking over, I spotted Alpha Xander entering with a tray filled with food. His expression lit up at the sight of me being awake. His smile sent a flutter through my chest. "Morning, Aurora," he greeted me in a soothing tone, his voice resonating warmly. "How are you doing today?" I tried to answer, but I hesitated. How was I feeling? I think I'm feeling better," I said. Alpha Xander nodded, setting the tray down on a nearby table. "That's good to hear. Do you think you can sit up? You should try to eat something." I nodded and then started to carefully lift myself up. A sharp pain went through my side, making me flinch. Without a word, Alpha Xander was there, his strong hands gently supporting me. I tensed at first, the memory of Asher's cruel touch still fresh in my mind. But Alpha Xander's hands were different, warm, gentle, steadying. I allowed myself to lean into his support, just a little. Once I was settled, Alpha Xander pulled up a chair and sat beside the bed. As I picked at the food, fresh fruit, warm bread, and some kind of herbal tea, he began to explain my recovery process. "Your body is healing well," he said, his hand occasionally brushing mine as he gestured. Each touch sent a spark through me, the mate bond humming contentedly. "But it will take time. You had some deep bruising and a couple of cracked ribs. Zara, our pack healer, says you should be fully recovered in a few weeks." I nodded, absorbing the information. A few weeks. It felt incredibly long. "Thanks," I whispered, looking into Alpha Xander's eyes. His smile was gentle, understanding. "You don't need to thank me, Aurora. You're my mate. I don't see looking after you as a duty. It's something to me that I deeply value." Softly, touched by his words, following a moment of silence, I drew in a breath and asked, "Do you think? Can I stand?" Alpha Xander's eyebrows rose in surprise, but he nodded. "If you feel up to it, we can certainly try." With Alpha Xander's help, I carefully moved my legs to the edge of the bed. My bare feet touched the chilly wooden floor, causing me to shiver slightly. I inhaled deeply and forced myself to get up. My legs are weak since they haven't been active for a few days. I started to lose balance, but Alpha Xander quickly put his arm around my back to support me. "I got you," he whispered softly, his breath feeling warm near my face. We took a few steps around the room, my body leaning heavily on Alpha Xander. Even though I was weak, it felt really nice to stand and walk. "Do you want to see the pack's house?" Alpha Xander asked. At my nod, he guided me slowly out of the infirmary and into the hallway. The pack house was beautiful, all warm woods and large windows that let in plenty of natural light. As we walked, Alpha Xander pointed out different rooms. The communal living area, the library, the training rooms, they all looked impressive and lavish. We went to the kitchen. It was big and spacious, and I saw a woman glancing up from the cutting board where she was chopping vegetables. She welcomed us with a warm smile. "Aurora," she called out, drying her hands on a towel as she came closer. "It's wonderful to meet you at last." I remembered Beta Jackson from my first day in the pack and managed a small smile in return. "Nice to meet you, Celine," I said gently. Celine's eyes shone with warmth. "I'm happy you're feeling well now. I've been eagerly awaiting to see you. Would you like to see your new room? I've filled the closet with some clothes that should fit you." I blinked in surprise, looking from Celine to Alpha Xander. He nodded encouragingly. That would be nice, I said. With Celine's help, I went to a bedroom close to the medical room. The room was big and had good airflow, with a big bed and a lovely view of the forest. "Why don't you try something on?" Celine suggested. "It might feel good to get out of those infirmary clothes." I nodded, selecting a soft sweater and a pair of leggings. With Celine's help, I changed, then turned to look in the full-length mirror on the closet door. For a moment, I hardly recognized myself. The girl I saw in the mirror seemed to changed. She is skinny and somewhat pale, yet her eyes now had a faint sparkle that wasn't noticeable before. Before I knew it, I was smiling. A knock on the door broke my daydream. Alpha Xander stuck his head in. "I want you to meet someone," he said. I nodded and went to meet him. He held my hand, and we walked towards the garden. In the garden behind the pack house, we met Zara, the pack healer. "Aurora," she said with a smile. "I'm glad to see you moving around again." "How are you feeling?" she asked. "I am feeling much better," I said. Zara nodded approvingly. "That's good to hear. Mind if I take a look at those ribs?" I tensed slightly, but nodded. Zara's touch was soft as she checked on me, her fingers moving gently over my ribs. "You're healing fast," she said. "Just remember to take it easy. No strenuous activity for at least another week." As lunchtime approached, Celine suggested we eat in the pack house dining room. I hesitated, nervous about meeting more pack members, but both Celine and Zara assured me it would be fine. The dining room was large and filled with round tables. As we entered, I felt curious gazes turn our way. I instinctively moved closer to Alpha Xander, who placed a reassuring hand on the small of my back. We sat at a table with Celine and Zara, who kept up a steady stream of conversation. They shared stories about the pack, funny anecdotes about training mishaps, tales of full moon runs, inside jokes that made little sense to me but had them in stitches of laughter. To my surprise, I found myself laughing along with them. It felt foreign, almost wrong after everything that had happened, but it also felt good, like maybe, just maybe, I could belong here. After lunch, Celine asked if I wanted to help prepare dinner. I agreed, grateful for something to do. In the kitchen, she set me to chopping vegetables while she worked on marinating meat for the grill. As we worked, Celine chatted easily about life in the Blackstone pack. I found myself relaxing, asking questions, and even sharing a bit about my own past, the good parts at least. When Alpha Xander returned from patrol late in the afternoon, he found us still in the kitchen. His eyes softened when he saw me, and a smile started to form at the edges of his lips. "It seems you're getting comfortable here," he remarked, speaking in a friendly tone. I nodded, suddenly shy. "Celine's been very kind," I said. At dinner, I sat next to Alpha Xander, our shoulders touching. The contact sent a warm tingle through me, the mate bond humming contentedly. I remained silent and unsure, but I didn't feel overwhelmed by unfamiliar faces anymore. After eating, Celine proposed a stroll under the moonlight. Zara joined us, and soon we were strolling through the pack grounds, the cool night air refreshing after the warmth of the pack house. As we walked, I found myself opening up more. The words came haltingly at first, then in a rush as I told them about my past. About Asher, about the rejection, about the fear and pain that had driven me to run. Tears flowed as I spoke, but Celine and Zara didn't shy away. They listened to me and spoke kindly to lift my spirits. Above all, they trusted me. It had been a long while since I felt like someone truly got me. As we headed back to the group's place, I saw my mate and his beta chatting by the trees. They seemed serious and worried. I walked slower, trying to hear what they were discussing. "Border breach in the North Quadrant," Beta Jackson was saying, his voice low and urgent. Alpha Xander nodded, his jaw clenched. "Increase patrols along all borders," he ordered, "and keep an eye out for any rogue wolves. We need to be cautious." The conversation I'd overheard between Alpha Xander and Beta Jackson echoed in my mind. Border breaches. Rogue wolves. Was I bringing danger to this pack that had shown me nothing but kindness? As the early morning light started to shine through my window, I hugged my blanket closer, feeling uncertain thoughts fill my head. How could I possibly be the Luna this pack needed? I was broken, cast aside by my former pack. What if I am not good enough? A sudden knock at my door interrupted me. "Aurora?" Alpha Xander's deep voice called softly. "Can I come in?" I hesitated before responding. Yes, come in. Alpha Xander entered. He was worried with concern as he took in my huddled form. Aurora, what's the matter? He inquired, moving to sit beside me on the bed. I couldn't meet his gaze as I quietly admitted, I'm not sure if I can manage this, Xander, to be your Luna. What if I don't measure up? He extended his hand and clasped mine, a gesture that felt comforting and warm. Aurora, please look at me, he said gently. When I finally looked up at him, his eyes showed only warmth and strong belief. You are much better than you think. The moon goddess chose you as my mate for a reason. You don't have to prove yourself to anyone. His words warmed something inside me, but the doubt lingered. But I don't know how to be a Luna. I'm not sure what I should do. Xander smiled softly. That's okay. I'll help you. Being Luna isn't about proving yourself through tasks or chores. It's about being a leader, a confidant, a source of strength for the pack. And those are qualities you already possess, Aurora. You just need to believe in yourself. As he spoke, Xander began to explain some duties I would have as Luna. He emphasized that my role was to support him and the pack, to be a voice for those who might not feel comfortable approaching the Alpha directly. Your empathy, your kindness, these are your strengths, Aurora. They're what will make you a wonderful Luna. His words made me feel stronger, and I started nodding, feeling a bit more confident inside. Okay, I whispered, I'll try. Later that morning, I found myself sitting beside Xander at my first pack meeting. Xander introduced me as his mate, and they all bowed to me. During the meeting, Beta Jackson shared his report. We've detected a border breach in the northern quadrant, he said, his voice grave. No confrontations yet, but we've increased patrols in all areas. I tensed up when he spoke, remembering my bad dream. Xander must have felt my worry through our bond because he reached for my hand under the table and gave it a comforting squeeze. After the meeting, Xander suggested we take a walk around the packlands. As we strolled through the territory, he pointed out various areas, the training grounds, the community gardens, the pup school. As Luna, you'll have a say in all aspects of pack life, he explained. Your input will be valuable in making decisions that affect the whole pack. Our tour led us to the pup school, where we met with the head teacher, a kind-faced woman named Elena. As she began to discuss some ideas for new education initiatives, I found myself stumbling over my words, my insecurity evident in every hesitant suggestion I made. But Elena was patient, encouraging my input and building on my ideas. I felt a little proud of myself. Perhaps I could actually manage this. As we left the school, Xander's hand found the small of my back, a gesture that sent warmth spreading through me. You did great there, he said softly. See? You have good ideas, Aurora. The pack will benefit from your perspective. Before I could respond, we were approached by Celine, her friendly face a welcome sight. Aurora, I was hoping to catch you, she said brightly. Some women in the pack were hoping to meet you. Would you like to join us for tea? I hesitated, looking at Xander. He nodded encouragingly. Go ahead, he said. It'll be good for you to get to know everyone. She took me to a comfortable living room where a group of female wolves had gathered. When I walked in, everyone looked at me, and I felt my nervousness come back strongly. But Celine's steady presence beside me gave me courage. Everyone, this is Aurora, our new Luna, Celine introduced me. I was immediately greeted by a group of friendly voices, and so I began to relax when I sat down. People began to talk around me, and I began to join in as much as I could, just telling them a bit about myself, like where I'm from. All the women were really nice and helpful, genuinely interested in what I said and really encouraging. However, I noticed a few women who stayed distant, watching me with cold eyes. Among them was a stunning dark-haired woman with very bright green eyes. She looked a bit disturbing, so I tried not to look at her. As the meeting ended, I heard the group talking. The beautiful woman said something softly, but I heard her clearly. It's not fair, she said. Xander and I were supposed to be together. Everyone knows it. This outsider has no place here. My heart sank at her words. Some people didn't want to accept me after all. When I was about to go, I came across the female wolf. When I saw her closely, she was even more beautiful, but the mean look in her eyes was clear. So you're the new Luna, she said, her voice full of venom. I'm Lyra. I hope you realize what you've walked into here. Before I could respond, Lyra leaned in close, her voice dropping to a hiss. You don't deserve to be Luna. You're nothing but a cast-off from another pack. Xander deserves better. Her words felt like a punch, making all my doubts come back. Without saying anything, I turned and ran away, not listening to Celine calling out worriedly behind me. I ran to my room, thinking about what Lyra said. She was right. I don't deserve to be Luna. Aurora? Xander's voice called out, showing his worry. Can I come in? When I didn't answer, he slowly opened the door, his eyes quickly finding mine. Right away, he was beside me, his arms holding me. What happened? He asked softly. I told him everything then about meeting the other women, Lyra's unfriendliness, and my profound uncertainty about myself. Xander listened carefully, holding me steady the whole time. After I was done, he moved back a little, his hands on my cheeks, making me look into his eyes. Aurora, hear me out, he said, his tone strong yet kind. Lyra's claims are false. There was never anything between us. You are my mate, chosen by the moon goddess herself. You belong here, with me, as my Luna. You are more than good enough, Xander said. Your kindness, your strength, your resilience, these are the qualities of a true Luna. The pack will see that, just as I do. As I looked into his eyes, seeing nothing but love and belief, I felt something shift inside me. A new resolve began to form. I couldn't let Lyra's words dictate my worth. You're right, I said. I must defend myself. I need to talk to Lyra and sort things out. Xander smiled, pride shining in his eyes. That's my Luna, he said softly. With newfound determination, I made my way through the pack house, searching for Lyra. I saw her with her friends. Lyra looked at me and smirked. Well, look who's here, she said, her voice full of sarcasm. Your Luna is here to visit us. I took a deep breath, getting ready for what was coming. Lyra, we need to talk. But I couldn't finish my sentence because there was a loud noise outside. There were urgent howls in the air, and I could hear people shouting near the edge of our group's territory. Xander appeared suddenly, his face tense. There's a group of unknown wolves at the border, he said quickly. They're requesting entry. I need to go deal with this. He turned to me, conflict clear in his eyes. Aurora, Go, I said firmly. The pack needs you. I'll be fine here. Xander nodded, pressing a quick kiss to my forehead before rushing off towards the border. As I turned back to Lyra, I saw something dangerous flash in her eyes. With Xander gone and the pack distracted, I suddenly realized I was alone with a wolf who clearly wished me harm. Lyra took a step towards me, her lips curling into a snarl. All right, Luna. She said the name with a hint of disdain. It seems it's only you and me here. Let's talk, shall we? I stood my ground as Lyra moved closer, her eyes showing her ill intentions. I could feel my heart beating fast. But beneath the fear, a new strength was rising. I was the Luna of this pack, and I wouldn't let Lyra intimidate me. Just as Lyra opened her mouth to speak, a loud crash interrupted our standoff. Beta Jackson burst into the room, his face etched with urgency. Luna Aurora, he called out, barely sparing a glance for Lyra. Alpha Xander needs you at the border immediately. Relief and concern flooded through me in equal measure. I gave Lyra one last steady look before turning to follow Beta Jackson. Whatever was happening at the border, it had to be serious for Xander to send for me. As we raced through the pack grounds, Beta Jackson filled me in. A group of wolves appeared at our border seeking sanctuary. They're in bad shape, Luna. Alpha Xander wants your input on whether to grant them refuge. My first major decision as Luna. The thought made me feel anxious, but I tried to ignore it. As we arrived at the border, I noticed Xander standing strong, his demeanor impressive as he confronted 10 wolves. They looked exhausted and injured, their clothes tattered and dirty. My heart ached at the sight. Xander's eyes found mine as I approached, and I saw relief flash across his face. Aurora, he said, reaching for my hand, I'd like you to meet our guests. They've requested sanctuary within our territory. He turned to the group. This is my mate and Luna, Aurora. Her voice carries equal weight to mine in this decision. I felt a swell of pride at Xander's words, at the trust he was placing in me. I stepped forward, addressing the group directly. What brings you to our borders? I asked, keeping my voice gentle but firm. An older wolf, seemingly the leader of the group, stepped forward. We were attacked by rogues, Luna. Our pack is gone. We've been running for days, seeking safety. Please, we mean no harm. We just need a place to rest and heal. I looked at their faces, and I could see the pain and fear in their eyes. I turned to Xander, our eyes meeting in silent communication. He nodded slightly, a small smile playing at his lips. "We will stay here temporarily," I said, my voice stronger than I expected. "You'll be given food, medical attention, and a place to rest. We'll discuss long-term arrangements once you've recovered." The relief on their faces was palpable. As Xander began organizing their entry into our territory, I helped guide them to our infirmary. I went back to my room and fell on my bed, thinking of everything that happened today. The confrontation with Lyra, the decision at the border, it all felt surreal. Despite my exhaustion, sleep was slow to come. When it did, my dreams were far from peaceful. Bright and scary dreams bothered me, changing my memories and fears into scary situations. I saw Asher's cruel face, heard his mocking laughter as he rejected me again. The scene changed, and suddenly I was back in the Blackstone pack, but everything was different. The pack members ignored me, their faces showing dislike. Lyra stood at Xander's side, smirking triumphantly as she took my place as Luna. I woke up screaming. My door swung open. Xander rushed to me and sat beside me, holding me in his arms. "Aurora," his voice filled with worry. "I'm here. You're safe." I held on to him, hiding my face against his chest, while I cried hard. Xander squeezed his arms tighter around me, and his hands stroked my hair while whispering comforting words. Slowly but surely, I calmed down. I felt myself getting embarrassed. "I'm so sorry I woke you up." Xander held me close and said, "Don't apologize," he insisted. "I sensed your worry through our bond. Do you want to talk about it?" He made me feel comfortable. Before I realized it, I was telling him everything, my bad dreams, my worries about not being worthy, and my doubts about my role in the group. Xander listened patiently, his presence a steady comfort. When I finally fell silent, he spoke softly. "Aurora, look at me." I looked up to see his eyes, and there I found only warmth and understanding. "You are way stronger than you think. You proved today what a remarkable Luna you are, and the pack sees it too." His words comforted me. "But what if I do something wrong?" I asked, voicing my deepest fear. "What if I let the pack down?" Xander smiled and said, "Then you'll learn from it and do better next time. Nobody's perfect, Aurora, not even alphas." His expression turned more serious. "Can I tell you a secret? I get really scared sometimes, too. Being in charge of this group and making choices that impact everyone's lives can be really tough. But having you with me, knowing we're tackling these problems side by side, it really helps." I looked at him with surprise, noticing that this was the first time he had really let me see his weaknesses. Right then, I felt our connection grow stronger, creating a deeper trust and closeness between us. As the early morning light started to shine through my window, Xander and I talked more freely than we ever had before. We told each other about our pasts, our dreams for the future, and our increasing feelings for each other. With every word, every shared laugh and comforting touch, I felt myself falling more deeply for this strong, kind wolf who had chosen me as his mate. As I started to feel really safe and comfortable for the first time in my life, a loud noise outside broke the quiet moment. People were yelling and growling near the rooms where we had put the wolves who had to leave their homes. Xander quickly stood up, his body getting stiff as he listened to the noise outside. "There's a problem," he said, his voice showing he was worried. We hurried outside, going towards the sounds of trouble. A crowd had gathered around the guest quarters, pack members murmuring in fear and confusion. As we made our way to the front, I was shocked by what I saw. One of the refugee wolves, a young male who had appeared calm just a few hours earlier, was changing. But this was not a typical change. His body twisted in an abnormal way, with bones breaking and reshaping at strange angles. When he lifted his head, I felt a shiver go down my back. His eyes were blood red, filled with wild anger I had never witnessed before. The changed wolf growled, drool falling from his lengthened teeth as he looked around. But as I watched the poor, twisted creature before us, I couldn't help but wonder, what had happened to these refugees, and had we just invited a terrible danger into our home? The chaos that broke out when the wolf transformed was more than anything I've witnessed before. Xander's strong leadership prevented the pack from becoming overly anxious as we tried to control the situation. With Zara's expertise, we managed to sedate the wolf, his unnaturally red eyes finally closing as the sedative took effect. "Take him to the dungeon," Xander ordered, his voice grim. We'll question him when he wakes. As the unconscious wolf was carried away, Xander turned to me, his eyes filled with concern. Aurora, are you all right? I nodded, though my heart was still racing. I'm fine. But Xander, what was that? I've never seen a transformation like that before. He shook his head, looking worried. I haven't either, but we'll figure this out. His expression became gentle as he held my face. For now, get some rest. We'll handle this tomorrow. I couldn't sleep that night because my mind kept thinking about the scary change over and over. When morning finally came, I was tired but happy to begin a new day. Xander came to my room, his face showing determination. Aurora, after what happened last night, I believe it's time you start training. I need to know you can protect yourself if anything happens. I was happy and anxious. Are you sure I am ready? He smiled, giving my hand a squeeze. More than ready. Beta Jackson will meet you at the training grounds in an hour. An hour later, I was at the training grounds, my palms sweaty as I watched Beta Jackson demonstrate a series of warm-up exercises. Other pack members were scattered around, some training, others watching curiously. All right, Luna, Beta Jackson said, turning to me with a serious expression. Let's start. We started with learning how to break free from someone's hold, and he showed me the most effective areas to strike and disable an attacker. At first, I struggled. My movements were uncertain. However, as we kept going, something unusual occurred. It felt like my body was recalling skills that my mind wasn't aware of. Beta Jackson nodded approvingly. Good. You've got instincts. Now, let's try some sparring. As we circled each other, I felt an unusual tingling feeling that spread throughout my body, and it continued to intensify, becoming nearly unbearable. All at once, I felt sharp pain inside me. I bent over, shouting in agony as my bones started to break. Panic flooded me. What was happening? She's shifting! I heard Beta Jackson shout, but his voice sounded far away, covered by the loud noise in my ears. The pain was terrible, worse than anything I've ever experienced. But under that pain there was something else, a rush of energy, fierce and uncontrolled. I embraced it, allowing it to flow through me. And so after the pain finally went away, everything around me seemed changed. Smells assaulted my nose, sounds I'd never noticed before filled my ears. I blinked, confused, then looked down. Instead of hands, I saw paws, pure white and larger than I expected. I'd shifted. I was in my wolf form. Murmurs rippled through the gathered pack members. I caught snippets of their conversations, marveling at how clear they sounded. Look at her fur. Pure white, bigger than most males. Before I could process it all, a large black wolf approached. Even in this form, I recognized Xander immediately. Our bond hummed strongly as he circled me, his scent wrapping around me like a comforting blanket. You look beautiful, his voice echoed in my mind. How do you feel? I tried to respond, but only managed a whine. How did I feel? Overwhelmed, powerful, alive. It's okay, Xander reassured me. Take it slow. Try to walk. I lifted a paw, surprised by how natural it felt. My first steps were wobbly, but I quickly found my balance. Soon I was walking around the training ground, enjoying my new form. Beta Jackson, now also in his wolf form, a sturdy brown wolf, approached. Ready to try some exercises, Luna? We ran really fast through the woods, and my feet hardly even touched the ground as I zoomed by many trees. I was surprised because I was faster than not just Beta Jackson, but also some of the strongest members of our group who came with us. When we returned to the training grounds, Beta Jackson set up a mock fight. As another wolf lunged at me, my body reacted instinctively. I dodged and countered with moves I'd never learned, my white form a blur of motion. Incredible, Beta Jackson said, his tone a mixture of awe and confusion. Where did you learn those techniques? Before I could ponder this, something strange happened. The world around me seemed to fade, replaced by flashing images I couldn't quite grasp. A silver moon, an ancient tree, a pair of glowing eyes. Luna Aurora? Beta Jackson's voice snapped me back to reality. I blinked, disoriented. What happened? Xander asked, concern evident in his voice. I shook my head, unable to explain the strange vision. As we ended the training session, I could feel the pack's eyes on me. Their whispers followed us back to the pack house. Did you see how fast she was? And those fighting moves. There's something special about her. I noticed Lyra watching from a distance, her eyes narrowed with barely concealed jealousy. I tried to ignore her, focusing instead on the warmth of Xander's presence beside me. Later, as Xander and I walked through the pack grounds, I overheard him talking quietly with Beta Jackson. "Her abilities are unprecedented," Beta Jackson was saying. "The speed, the instinctive fighting skills, not to mention her unique coloring. What do you think it means?" Xander's response was too low for me to catch, but the serious tone of their conversation unsettled me. As we passed groups of pack members, more whispers reached my ears. "Just like the prophecy said, a white wolf faster than the wind. Could she be the chosen one?" Prophecy? Chosen one? What were they talking about? The discomfort that had been increasing throughout the day became more intense. That evening, while getting ready for sleep, I noticed my reflection in the mirror. For an instant, I believed I saw my eyes briefly turn a bright silver color. I blinked, and they returned to their usual appearance. Was it just my imagination? As I got into bed, my thoughts were filled with questions. What was going on with me? Why was I so different from other wolves? And what did it all mean for my future in the pack? As I fell asleep, I felt strongly in my heart that this was just the start of something important. In my dreams, I saw myself running through a forest with the moonlight showing me the way. A voice, old and strong, spoke softly in my ear. "Prepare yourself, Aurora. Your destiny awaits." I suddenly woke up, and the words were still playing in my head as the first light of dawn entered my room. I made up my mind that regardless of what was happening to me, or what this supposed destiny was, I would be ready. I couldn't stop thinking about my dream and the words I heard. "Prepare yourself, Aurora. Your destiny awaits." What did it mean? And how did it connect to the strange abilities I'd discovered yesterday? Before I had time to think more about it, a gentle knock on my door broke my concentration. Celine peeked inside, her friendly smile a nice break from my troubling thoughts. "Good morning, Aurora," she said cheerfully. "I hope I'm not disturbing you." I shook my head and returned a small smile. "What's up?" Celine's eyes sparkled with excitement. "Well, Zara and I were thinking, how would you like to join us for a girls' night tonight? Just the three of us, some wine, good food, and lots of girl talk." I hesitated. The offer was really appealing, but I still felt a bit cautious about fully trusting them. Celine seemed to pick up on my hesitation and said, "It would be really important to us if you joined. We'd enjoy the opportunity to become better friends with you." Before I could say anything, another person chimed in. "I think that's a fantastic idea," Xander said, appearing behind Celine. His eyes met mine, filled with encouragement. "Building relationships within the pack is important, Aurora." Seeing their eager expressions, I nodded. "Okay," I said, "I will join you." That night, I found myself in Celine's living room. Zara was already there, filling the glasses with wine. As I sat down on a pillow, I felt a blend of anxiety and excitement. "To us," Celine toasted, raising her glass. Zara and I echoed the sentiment, the rich wine warming me from the inside out. As the night went on, I felt more at ease than I had in a long time. We exchanged tales, laughed over pack gossip, and gradually I started to talk about my history. To my surprise, instead of pity or disgust, I found understanding and support in their eyes. "You know," Celine said, refilling our glasses, "I struggled when I first came to the pack, too. Being Beta Jackson's mate, everyone had such high expectations. I felt like I was constantly falling short." I looked at her in surprise. Celine always seemed so confident, so at ease in her role. "How did you overcome it?" I asked. She smiled softly. "Time, mostly, and realizing that I didn't have to be perfect. I just had to be myself." Zara nodded in agreement. "When I first became the pack healer, I made tons of mistakes. But as you grow, you learn, and you find your place." Their words really touched me. I felt more confident and ended up telling them about my dream. As I spoke, I noticed Celine and Zara exchange a meaningful glance. Their eyes showed a mix of excitement and worry, which made me stop. "What's going on?" I inquired. "Do you know anything about what's happening to me?" Before they could answer, a loud group of howls came from the woods. The full moon run was beginning. "We should join the pack," Zara said, a bit too quickly. While we hurried to catch up with the rest, I couldn't help but think they were keeping something from me. Yet, the excitement of the upcoming run distracted me from those worries. Shifting was easier this time. My body effortlessly transformed into my wolf. When we assembled at the forest's border, I sensed the pack watching me. My white fur appeared to shine under the moonlight, standing out. Xander's black wolf appeared beside me, his presence reassuring. "Ready?" His voice echoed in my mind. We all let out a loud howl and ran into the woods. The excitement of the race was amazing. My feet hardly hit the ground as I moved quickly between trees, jumped over small rivers, and climbed steep slopes without any trouble. I was surprised to find that I was running faster than even the strongest members of our group, keeping up with Xander, who was leading the way. As we went back towards the pack grounds, I overheard some wolves saying, "Did you see how fast she is? Just like the stories, the white wolf of legend." "It must be her," one was saying. "The prophecy speaks of a white wolf with unprecedented abilities." "But if it's true," another replied, "then dark times are ahead. The prophecy warns of great challenges." I'd heard enough. Spotting Celine and Zara nearby, I marched over to them, my patience worn thin. "What aren't you telling me?" I demanded. "What's this prophecy everyone keeps whispering about?" Celine and Zara exchanged another of those meaningful looks before Celine sighed. "Maybe we should tell you now," she whispered gently. "Among werewolves, there's an ancient legend about a white wolf who is destined to change our world." Zara nodded, adding, "The legend speaks of a wolf with extraordinary powers, faster than the wind, stronger than the mountains. But it also warns of the great challenges this wolf will face." "And you think I'm this legendary wolf?" "We don't know for certain," Celine said gently, "but the signs are hard to ignore." My mind was reeling. How could I, Aurora, the rejected wolf from a small, cruel pack, be some legendary figure of prophecy? It didn't make sense. "There's more," Zara said hesitantly. "Word of your existence is spreading. Other packs are beginning to talk." As if to confirm her words, we were interrupted by Beta Jackson, his face grave. "Alpha Xander needs to see you immediately, Luna Aurora," he said. "He's received a message from the High Alpha Council. They're requesting a meeting about you." The High Alpha Council? The governing body of all werewolves, shrouded in mystery and power? Why would they be interested in me? As I followed Jackson to Xander's office, my mind was filled with everything I had just learned, and then a sudden, intense pain shot through my head. The surroundings around me disappeared, and I saw a quick succession of images. A gloomy forest with trees that were dying, wolves battling each other with blood on the ground. A mysterious figure with bright red eyes, laughing while everything fell apart, and throughout it all, a feeling of terrible things about to happen. A threat that wasn't just to my pack, but to all werewolves. The vision ended as fast as it started, leaving me breathless and confused. One thing was obvious. Whatever future was waiting for me, whatever part this prophecy said I was supposed to play, it was more significant and risky than I could have ever thought. When I stepped into Xander's office and saw the worry in his eyes, I braced myself,